Welcome to the latest edition of the Global Frequency as we bring you a special discussion about the EU debate, better known as Brexit. I am your new host, Georgie Morrell, and I am joined by CJ Rock on my right.
Hello.
And Joseph Sarrington-Smith on my left.
Hello.
Are you ready? We have been away for a long time, but back we are. Brexit.
Sounds like a breakfast cereal to me, I have to say, to be quite honest.
Yeah, ready Brexit. That's what I've heard.
Hate the term. Hate it. It's a terrible way of putting it.
But Bremain is even worse, though, isn't it?
It's just to make it easier for Sun readers, I think. It's like, it does. Ooh, do you know what? That was me. I do apologise, that was me. I went off.
So sorry.
I thought I was on silent, but it's obviously ever so wrong in every single way. But yeah, carry on, don't mind me.
Right, so yeah. You want to clear that up in editing? Right, the EU referendum. Do we stay or do we go? The government can't work it out for themselves, so it has been passed to us, the people. It is next week, the 23rd of June, and it will decide the fate of the UK within the EU. This show is designed to debate a few of the issues and find out if it is all as terrifying as the politicians and the press are making it out to be. Or is it a great example of democracy in action? So let's battle on through the show.
We're going to have to, aren't we?
Well, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got to see this through. We've started now.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Has the debate become toxic?
I think it was toxic long before it started. I think it's always been horrible, messy discussion to have. I personally, I don't know how anybody else feels, but I don't like referendums. I think they're very divisive in a way that elections aren't. And people aren't asking the questions, what's going to happen, if we vote yes to leave, no to the EU, and Scotland, the Scots are incredibly pro-European.
That's a good point. The Scottish referendum, the reason they are not independent is because most of them wanted to stay as a member of the EU. So we've thrown that back in their faces, essentially.
Yeah. That's gone out the window. And then what's left? What happens when this vote's all over? That worries me more. But the toxicness, I think, has come from the fact it's gotten into the whole issue of immigrants, which I don't think should be an issue on the table. It's a silly discussion to have. It's the type of discussion that should have been left decades ago, back in the 70s when people were fussed about it. It's tied up with immigrants, which has become tied up with asylum seekers, which has become tied up with the war, which has become tied up with people's attitude towards Islam. I'm worried. If we go out, I just have this nightmare of fascism rearing its head, because this is fascism. If you're saying that if you vote to stay in Europe, you're not British enough, or you're not patriotic enough. What is that? What else is that than, I don't know, it scares me a bit.
I feel like with the Leave campaign, it is a generation who are keen on it that remember Britain from a long time ago before it joined the EU, and seem to remember, days of, yesteryear when everything was a lot better, and, beer was cheaper, we were better at football, and all of these things, and that if we leave, it will go back to that, which, of course, it won't. It's also the attitude towards the refugees as well. That is a much bigger issue than whether we should stay in the EU, but we'll come back to that later. Joseph?
Yeah, I think it has been quite toxic as well, and I would agree with Curtis in that the toxicity, if you like, did start months before this was even announced.
Yeah.
I think there has been a lot of scaremongering, mostly from the press, as is often the case, but from politicians as well. And, I would agree that a lot of it has been centred on immigration as well, and the fact that I feel as though the tabloids are making this all about that when it's about loads of other things as well. It
was the first thing that the tabloids seemed to go for was immigration and scaremongering as well. That everyone was going to get thrown out.
Yeah.
And it still seems to be riding on that, which is a shame.
Yeah, and I don't think leaving will necessarily solve the migration crisis, because surely the border controls would move from Calais to Dover, wouldn't they? So that's...
There is border control in both places. The problem is that illegal immigrants or asylum seekers, hence the word illegal, don't abide by any of those rules.
Yeah.
Even if you leave the EU, they're just going to go. They're still going to keep coming because they want to go somewhere better. There was a Question Time I watched a couple of weeks ago, and on it, a young lady. A guy started talking about, we need to close the borders, we need to look after our own, we need to look after the NHS, we need to build roads, we need to build schools. And I was just sat there going, who are you going to get build all that stuff. Funnily enough, it's going to be immigrants because you need skilled labour from around the world, let alone Europe. Most of it will come from Europe. You'll need them to come in over here and build stuff because that's what they've been doing on the continent, a lot more than we've been doing in this country. And that's how you build up an economy.
And the NHS is already in the shitter, and changing the immigration policy, we're going to lose half of the NHS workforce.
Exactly. Especially if they're making a promise about immigration. It's not even the EU that's scary about this. They're making promises about immigration because a lot of the staff in the NHS come from South Asia, Eastern Europe, places like that. So they close down the borders. What are they going to do about all those people? Because that's what they're talking about. The thing that this entire campaign has proved to me is that really people don't know enough about Europe. They don't know what the real issues are to do with Europe. They keep going about bureaucrats in Brussels. Some of those bureaucrats are ours. They go about the European Parliament. Some of those parliamentary members are ours. So what are they talking about? It sounds to me not like code language, but wording for foreigners. British people are effectively saying, we hate foreigners. But in that very British way, we're going, well, bureaucrats, the people over there, we're part of this gig.
The bureaucrats that people, are blaming. It's like, well, if you want to blame anyone, blame our Prime Minister who was supposed to secure a deal with them, and his government should be making the decision for us. I mean, I'm going to labour that point because it has been passed to us when we entrusted them to do it. Just picking up on what you said as well, people don't understand the EU and what it does, and they don't. If anything good can come from this debate, whatever the result, is that people know more about the EU and how important it can be, and where the flaws are as well, what we needed to be changed when David Cameron went to Brussels and tried to get that and got it thrown back in his face. That's something good that can come of it. But if people want to know about it, go and find out.
I thought that's what Google was doing.
There's actually so much information about this on the internet. It's ridiculous.
I mean, it's just a phone. It's mad.
I was going to say this later, but I'll say this now. I think, contrary to what you said earlier, that the campaign's shown that people now know more, I think it's proved that the British electorate as a whole are morons. Debate after debate, I've seen them sit there and go, well, my mother can't get a house because of foreigners. I can't get a job because of foreigners. And I think the words of Louis C.K. are applied so beautifully to this. If somebody who can't speak English, who had to get across a boat, cross borders illegally, and has no money, can get a job that you could have gotten, what does that say about you? Let alone the foreigner? Come on. I could think of better reasons to leave the EU. It is bureaucratic. It isn't representative of the people of Europe. They do make huge mistakes. I think the whole thing with the immigrants and the deal they made with Turkey is disgusting and flows in the face of what I used to think Britain was about, what I used to think Europe was about. But the more I read history books, no, it wasn't.
By all means, it is not perfect, but we are debating essentially an out of the frying pan into a fire scenario for the country. Bring it back to toxicity. We were talking about this, Joseph, before we started recording.
Yeah.
And it's the actual structure of each campaign. And it's been with the mayoral election was the same. The Labour leadership, when Jeremy Corbyn got in, a lot of mudslinging seems to be going on. They're getting personal and they're getting nastier. Wasn't so bad in the general election. Well, wasn't as bad, still bad though, and Ed Miliband got everything thrown at him possible.
Yeah.
Not defending him, but they really, really went for him and went down quite low blows. And I'm getting that now again with, you've got Farage and Boris Johnson on one side, and then a sort of mixture on the other of different people, and celebrities are getting involved, flagging each other off.
Yeah.
That to me is a toxic element of it as well.
Yeah, I get the impression, I mean, I can't compare with other eras, but I feel almost as if social media has made it a lot worse, because now everyone can have a very public opinion, no matter how, nasty or exaggerated or over the top it might be. All you need to do is write it out, and then it's there to see.
Yeah.
So
it will influence people.
yeah,
everyone
it will.
uses Twitter and everyone uses Facebook. and not everybody is educated enough to a level or brought up in a way to see through it.
Exactly, because I
see
think,
that the opinions aren't.
Because I look at Facebook and Twitter, I mean, they of course they have their positives, but I think one negative aspect is sometimes they can, especially with political debates, become a bit of an echo chamber. And I think sometimes people forget almost to think for themselves and look past any sort of propaganda.
Again, I've got to jump in there and I don't think the problem is that people can't think for themselves. I think they do, but I think they're fundamentally morons. I mean, you look at how you look at what people are saying on both sides of the argument, okay? Again, it always comes down to immigrants and the economy, this will happen, that will happen. Not, let's look at the actual issues of why people want to leave the EU now, okay? And I've spoken to people who've got very good arguments for leaving the EU, right? But if you look online, the problem with online isn't that everybody's got an opinion. It's that everybody thinks their opinion is right, everybody thinks they're hilariously funny, and they want everybody to know this.
Well, that's another issue as well.
That could be applied to myself as well, because I started up a website and blah, blah, blah. But I listen to people, I talk to people, I try and educate myself about stuff. People don't want to educate themselves about it because they've got their views. If you look at the whole EU debate, people want to talk about immigrants, people want to talk about tax. I was abused for at least half an hour a couple of weeks ago by this guy. He was this Irish guy who came over here, he was working here, and for some reason he thought I was taking his money. I don't know why. I'm not saying he was racist, but he kept saying that to me. You've taken my money. Why am I work? How much tax do you pay? And I'm like, a lot.
Yeah.
1/5 of my wage, the same as everybody else. Oh, don't give me that. And it's kind of like people are angry about various issues. That have got nothing to do with Europe. They're angry about things that have got nothing to do with the leaving the EU. And this has all been tied into the EU debate, and that's the sad thing, you know?
The campaign on either side seems to have taken advantage of that people will just take things on face value, what the press about, and not question it. That's where I think we're having a lot of the problems. Right, that brings us on nicely to, some of the subjects that are what we're supposed to be thinking about, what people may not be or not questioning further. Consumer affairs.
Yep.
Yeah. Those?
Consumer affairs.
Yep.
Yeah,
we'll
I mean,
break that down.
Consumer affairs. There we go.
Get serious about this.
Yeah.
To break down what consumer affairs is, the EU legislates on consumer protection issues and regulates on trading standards. The stated aims of the single market are to stimulate competition and trade, improve efficiency, raise quality and cut prices. Campaigners disagree about the overall effect on household costs. So, to break that down, it's essentially what we're paying into. It's what is capitalism essentially?
Well, it's like if you look at what the EU does. So, for instance, they bring in rules. Like last year, there was that rule about household appliances and hoovers and stuff that they could washing machines. I think it was that they could only be of a certain power. So they needed to use less energy and less power. So loads of hoovers were bad, and light bulbs. I remember that there was a rule that you had to have energy-saving light bulbs in your house.
All right.
So there were those rules that came in, and effectively what they did was they meant that you had to get rid of certain hoovers or certain old-style cars. You had to get rid of those. They bring those sort of rules. But some people say they push up prices and stuff like that. And Dyson's like it interferes with our way we do business. It is important. Because sometimes the EU may do stuff that hinders a British business's ability to bring products to people. But under the EU, we pay less for everything than we ever have. Even the EU makes rolling charges drop across Europe. They do things like that, and I don't know. Yes, there is an argument to leave, but the people that are making the argument just terrify me. Is it Robert Dyson?
The Hooverman?
Hooverman hates the EU. And I was like, if we leave the EU, you're going to bring back your Hoover making to the UK?
Well, he's got himself caught in a vacuum, which is ironic, isn't it, really? Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you.
Picking up on what you said, Curtis, for the And a good example of the EU having too much power in regards to trade would be the tampon tax. That is not seen as if anyone doesn't know this, I mean, you must, it was everywhere, is that tampons and sanitary products are seen as a luxury good and therefore you pay a tax on them. This obviously caused a huge amount of uproar because it is not a luxury. I think we can all agree on that. And that is the EU sort of at its worst, really, in terms of trade, where things are just getting a little bit silly.
True, but I think that was more to do with the tradition towards women's products in general. You know, it's kind of like they were seen that way when maybe they shouldn't have been seen that way. And yes, that was a European thing, but the UK government, that was something we were able to change, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah.
I don't know. I really should pay more attention to that.
So the way it's looking at the moment in terms of how it affects consumers being in the EU is that it makes things more expensive. People seem to think if we were to leave, everything would be a lot cheaper. We don't know that for sure.
No, I mean, I trust the EU Commission more than I trust the government. I won't demonise the Tories because I know this is not party politics. There are actually a lot of people on the left who want to leave. It's not just the right. But yeah, I think consumer and worker rights would disappear, and I'm also worried the bank regulation would probably get ripped up as well. Well, I say probably, possibly, but
I don't think the workers' rights would go because, you know, the British people, as much as they're cynical about socialism and the Labour Party at the moment, once they started seeing some of those workers' rights go, you know, paid holiday, paid leave, all those types of things, then it starts going, wait a minute, you know, it's not like we're going to lose the ability to vote, and I think British people, you know, we'll still be able to vote. We'll still have democracy here. It just means that we're going to have the you know, the evil version of the Avengers in charge. You know, Boris, Farage, Grove. They're going to be the guys there now, and it's like as if that wasn't enough reason to vote in. But I don't think the British people are necessarily going to go, you know, let all those rules go and regulation go just because they're told to. Like I said, I think there are decent arguments to leave Europe. One of the most compelling ones I heard, especially in terms of consumerism and price of products, is that we'd do more trade with the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
You know, we'd get more people in from the Commonwealth. And I think for me that was, and it was actually Farage who said that, even though I think he's so close to being an outright racist. You know, I thought that was a decent argument to make. And so what if things become more expensive? Even if they did, I think we underpay for the things that we shouldn't be underpaying for, and we overpay for things that we shouldn't overpay for. Like your iPads, your electronic goods, they're overcharged. Whereas your clothing, which is made by, you know, Mustafa in wherever it is and paid 1 pence a top. You know, that's bad business to me. That's bad economics. They've made it acceptable. They've made slave labour acceptable in a way because it's acceptable to buy an iPad and an iPhone. Whereas I know when I was younger, late 80s, early 90s, child labour was seen as something that was unacceptable. That was disgusting. Now it's like, that iPhone looks so good.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, it's our disposable income, and we can, you know, look like a celebrity, but it's all from Primark.
Yeah,
and it's very cheap.
Even maybe that's a good argument for it. That's not the argument.
No, that's it. They've really missed a trick there. Farage and Boris, they're throwing all sorts at the Leave campaign, including immigration and scaremongering through that. When actually they've got a very good argument in terms of consumerism and bringing some business back, but they've just chosen not to focus on that.
Maybe leaving would re-establish a friendship with the Commonwealth. I don't know.
It could unite it. However, we've also got, and we'll come on to this later, we've also got America on the other side, so I think they might want to get in on some sort of trade deal, but we'll come to that later.
Commonwealth and chill.
We've focused very much on Leave and Remain in regards to consumerism. I've got a bit of numbers here. People in Britain save an average of £450 a year because prices are lower as a result of EU membership. So that's essentially the counter-argument to the expensive consumerism of being in the EU. Somebody has worked that out. I don't know who. It's you, Curtis.
I'm nowhere near that clever. I googled and chilled.
That figure has come up a lot in the press. I've noticed that is
The thing about economics is any economy changes over time. So yes, we pay a lot less, and we don't have that many charges at the moment. But if we leave the EU, it could go up. It could also come down eventually.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're still coming out of a recession, essentially, and, you know, a lot of rumours that there's going to be another.
Almost
so God knows
certainly,
which way
and
it's gonna
hopefully
go.
it's going to be in housing prices.
Oh,
just saying.
God. I'm never going to
Just saying,
a
man.
house.
Fulham, big up. No, but yeah, I think yes, there's a lot to be said for you know, we do save on a lot, like roving charges with mobiles, flight travel. Whether or not that change if we leave the EU is a question that should be asked, you know, and it's an honest question to ask.
Well, some of the things I feel like neither campaign has really answered on. It's all up in the air. That's, you know, why a lot of people are scared to leave, because we don't know.
Yeah, that's actually one of my main concerns. I don't think I'm remotely qualified or anyone to know what will be best for the country in the long term. I mean, that's why it's one of those things, because we've been told so many times this is one of the biggest decisions we'll ever make in our life. But if no one knows ultimately what the outcome could be in the long term, then that sort of makes you think, oh, hang on a second. You know, it could be the most important decision, but when you don't know what the long-term result will be, that gives you pause for thought in a way, I think.
So it should do.
Yeah,
we need to think about this, and I do wish there'd been a lot more information and people were thinking about this rationally, because the fact that the Sun newspaper is so confident and it put that front page up and all the rest of the believe in Britain, that it's about believing, that it's just about having faith in something. It's more than about that. It's about real things. It's about bread and butter. It's about your job. It's about your pay. It's about your tax. And not Europe necessarily, but it's about how much does your travel cost on your way to work? How much does your holiday cost? How much is it going to cost to bring up kids? You know, we live in an economy which I've always found strange, especially when people complain about Europe. In Europe, they pretty much pay women to have kids. You know, they support families that have kids. In the UK, you now have to get a job to earn money, to pay your rent, and somebody to look after your kids while you're at work. That's insane. We've created a false economy based on the fact that you have to go to work now if you're a woman, unless you're really, really rich.
Yeah, unless you are incredibly rich, and then you're in a position of potentially remortgaging to afford all of these things, and then everything goes into a property that you never pay off, and you never get anywhere. Money is not saved, and it's just not productive. It's cute, if anything, what the Sun's been doing in the Leave campaign, almost this romantic idea as we'll leave the EU and be free and it'll be glorious and all of this, but it's just so unrealistic.
Because they're trying to do something by not admitting something.
Yeah.
I had a friend who put a post up, a quote from Churchill, and the quote was basically, we should never be part of Europe, we should always be separate from it. He was angry when he made that quote because they had an argument with de Gaulle the night before D-Day. But what he didn't know was that after that, Churchill was one of the architects of the EU. He dreamed of somewhere that had no borders where you could just go to. Yeah. And I pointed that out to him and he got quite offended. But I was like, this is why they haven't brought... If you notice, they haven't mentioned World War II or Churchill that much.
Well, I think that's surprising.
When they've done it, they've made fools of themselves. Because the fact of the matter is that a lot of people were pro-European after World War II. They didn't want to see war again. They didn't want to see Europe arguing amongst each other anymore.
Yeah.
And what surprises you about that, Joseph?
Well, what surprises me is that one of my main motivations for wanting to vote in is that as a pacifist, I think it would, help promote peace a lot more, because I think sometimes we take peace for granted in this country and we forget our past. I think it's important to remember that this year is the centenary of the Battle of the Somme, and I believe also Verdun. I think Curtis, the history nut, could vouchsafe for that.
Curtis is nodding.
Yeah, good. Got my history correct. Got my dates correct. But the European history books before 1945 were bloody, weren't they? And if we could just, compromise over combat is one of the things that I was thinking about recently, and also diplomacy over chauvinism, I think, is the way forward.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's a shame that the wars have not been mentioned more.
Yeah.
I think
all.
it doesn't suit the narrative, and
Yeah.
I think especially with the wars, I think people see them, especially World War II, is this great glorious moment where the British people came together and they fought off evil, even though it was Polish people, French people, Italian people. You know, there's one fighter pilots. There was that picture that a newspaper put up of the pilots during World War II, and it wasn't. It was a bunch of Polish pilots during World War II who fought in the Battle of Britain. But the narrative doesn't suit it, because a lot of the people after World War II were like, do you know what? We can't let this happen again. And people forget it was the creation of diplomacy and discussion after the World War II that stopped it. And coming together again would stop something like that from happening again. We haven't had war in Western Europe since World War II, no matter what the Spanish say about Gibraltar.
Oh, let them have it. On that's Jeremy Corbyn's sort of point and argument for not just Brexit, but a lot of the problems they're having is there are no good lines of communication between us and the rest of Europe. Diplomacy is just not happening. No. And unfortunately, that is down to our government. On that, we mentioned that, it's the unknown, leaving the EU. We don't know what will happen. We don't even have a clue. Surely, and I put this out to you guys, isn't it our government to give us an idea? It should be a strong government who should be able to find out whether it is the way to go or not. And in my opinion, they have failed completely in that we are ill-informed.
Yeah, I'd agree that we're ill-informed, but the other week, in fact, it might even been earlier this week actually, Nigel Farage admitted that he has absolutely no idea what would happen if we left. And while I initially thought, well, come on, Nigel, that's not very good, is it? If this is something you're passionate about, you should have an idea. And I part of me does think that, but at the same time, like I was saying, does anyone know? I mean, we can come up with an idea.
I can give you an example.
Yeah, okay.
It's called the United States of America, probably the greatest union on earth of countries. People forget that because, especially in today's climate, it's very easy to look at America and look at them as the great Satan, as a lot of people do. But actually, America, for all its faults, is a union of several, 51 separate countries that came together and basically went, let's do something different. Let's see if we can make things happen here. And the Americans, they're successful. 200 and odd years old America is. Most powerful country in the world.
Yeah.
That's success. Okay, financial, economic and military success. Don't get me wrong, it has its faults.
Oh yeah, it's not
especially
perfect.
Democracy-wise, but there's a reason why America's great, because of its democracy, and two, because of immigrants, baby. And that's something people need to. I would, if I was on that campaign, I would have gone, look, the USA has all of this. We can take the best bits and do something great with the EU here. But Europeans, including the British, are this is my country, this is your country, but let's work together on this stuff. Let's bring the people together. And that's the problem with the EU. That's why people actually want to leave. The businesses are all coming together. The corporations are all coming together. The people aren't.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to do. So we don't have another European championship and everybody starts beating seven shades out of each other.
Yeah.
Just putting it out there.
Yeah.
We have let ourselves down in that regard, England. We are sorry for that.
Yeah.
And these are the things that need to happen, in my view.
And it can't happen with an elected government that is divided over an EU, whether we stay or go, and it is passed on to the people. That, I think, is an example of where we're not connecting with the rest of Europe. There are not lines of communication and discussion. On that, we are going to take a short break. Bye.
Yeah, we'll be back. Woo!
And welcome back to Global Frequency. We are discussing the EU referendum debate, better known as Brexit. I'm your host, Georgie Morrell, and I'm still joined by Joseph and Curtis. They have not left. They are still here, which is nice. We just finished up talking about the government and their responsibility with lines of communication and diplomacy between us and the rest of the EU, which neatly brings us on to sovereignty and laws. How far the UK has the ability to make its own laws and decide how it is governed. So does its place in the EU affect the laws that we have and can put forward? And will that change? Will it not? Leave and remain. I'm going to throw this to you first, Curtis, if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all. I think the debate over sovereignty is at the moment a very silly one. It's something for the future we need to look at. But to my knowledge, only about 10% of laws come from the EU, and most of those are to do with workers' rights. Also, I would say that we have as much control over our parliament as any European country does. It's not like that parliament sits in there and does nothing, contrary to popular belief. And if anything, when people go, it's not democratic, sorry, what's the House of Lords? What is that? It's people who are not elected, and our head of state's the Queen, who, don't get me wrong, ladies and gents, I like the Queen, I really, really do.
She's a nice lady.
And so are her sons. But
Go that far.
she's unelected, she's born to power, a ridiculous concept in the modern age. And at least the EU, you can vote who goes in there. All of the people in there are representative of their government. We're a part of that, contrary to what anybody believes. It's not a bunch of jolly foreigners sat over there going, well, let's make the Brits today that bit harder. It's not.
Yeah, they're not trying to make us suffer. And the democracy, it is democratic, our government. It is by no means perfect, but it's about as democratic as you're ever going to get, really.
Yeah.
It does have an opposition, we seem to forget. We were just saying this subject within the debate fascinates me because it seems to be one that neither sides of the campaign have picked up much on, nor of the press. The UK has the ability to apply EU derivatives. EU regulations are binding across all member states. So what have we got there? There are things that we sort of agree on, but we do have the ability to put our own laws out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so.
That laws based on where we are, where our economy is, where our people are. We're allowed to do that. I think for me, like I said, the current debate is silly and juvenile. The reason why both sides aren't talking about it, the second you mention sovereignty to somebody over here, they go, bureaucrats making up rules. And that's why they haven't mentioned it a lot, because people don't understand it. People haven't done any research. And if we lose the EU because of this, we're going to be voting on stuff that people just don't know enough about. And that is silly. Like I said, 10% of laws that come out, and most of them are workers' rights. The right to use, if you're sorry to keep bringing up women and children here, but if you're married and you have a kid, or not married and have a kid, your partner's allowed to use part of your maternity leave. And I believe that was a European directive. And it's little things like that. People don't realise that it's actually brought a lot of good things into their lives.
Well, yeah, and just picking up on that, people think, it is the EU making a decision and we're all having to go along with it. EU laws are proposed by the European Commission, and most of them must be agreed by at least 60 national governments. That's representing 65% of EU population, as well as the European Parliament. So it's not that laws are going through and willy-nilly, and that they're doing what they're like and we're suffering as a result. And I'm going to pass it over to you, Joseph.
Yeah, well, I think add to that the fact that a lot of people in this country seem to think that politicians prefer to make short-term decisions rather than long-term decisions, and also the feeling that the government would rather be helping themselves and their friends rather than the country. And I think you look at something like sovereignty and law, I think with a little bit more scrutiny in a way as well.
If I can jump in, absolutely, totally agree with you, but I think that the way the press has made it seem as if there's absolutely no representation. There are problems. There's corruption. There's people taking money out of the EU. There's bribery, no doubt, going on. But you put it in perspective. It is not the whole of the EU. Europe is not corrupt in the sense people think it is, and that's part of the problem. And like I said, if people are that worried about democracy, bring it on. Get an elected second chamber. We had the opportunity to vote for a second elected chamber. What did we do? We said no. Okay, this is supposedly the country that's worried about democracy. Okay, that wants more democracy. We were given the opportunity to have a second elected chamber. Nick Clegg, it was the corner piece of his reason why he joined the Tories.
Bless.
And what did we do? We said no. And like I said, it just reinforces my belief that the British voting public are morons.
It comes down to each side of the campaign. One seems to be scaremongering things that aren't actually true. So the EU does make decisions for us. All of our UK laws are made in Brussels, and they dominate. It's like, well, I mean, you've really just got to have a good look at the law over here and compare it with the other EU states and see that it is very different over here. There is a higher standard of human rights in regards to the law. Focusing on the Remain, only a minority of UK laws derive from the EU. So as we've just been saying, we do have a majority of what we have control of in regards to the law. So people need to calm down on that, I think, to say the least.
Complaining about bloody bananas.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
What, the price of bananas?
The shape of bananas. There was always that story about the EU had
What?
a directive that said bananas had to be a certain shape.
Really?
Oh
I did think I
my
did hear about
God.
this. But then, because I thought it was to do about the fact that someone thought the banana should be straight instead of curvy, which was no.
Honestly, I don't know, because I honestly don't care. Straight or not, banana's banana. I'm sure, I've had many a banana, and whatever shape it was, never bothered me.
And just to, so Cameron's not seen as all bad in the government. Cameron's EU deal allows national parliaments to block legislations. We actually do have power to veto on certain things. So, he's trying.
He's very trying.
Yeah.
Touche. Actually, that banana thing, there was, I think Jamie Oliver did it, all about the wastage of food, because EU regulation on food, things have to be, cucumbers have to be certain lengths, leeks have to weigh so much, and we waste a huge amount. And people won't buy it if it looks a bit odd.
There were the old food mountains. Well, the Brits are guilty of that more than anything. Back in the day when I was younger, there were the food mountains, which were just loads of food being wasted because they were leaving. They weren't allowed to use it, so they were subsidising farmers because and there was huge mountains of wheat, corn, whatever that weren't being used and literally left to waste. I don't think that happens so much anymore these days, or at least they don't publicise it. But that would be a good idea to reason to leave Europe. There's a load of wastage going on. But I don't know.
As someone who likes food, the idea of food going to waste is horrifying.
It
I have to say.
It's terrible. I hate wasting food. Hate wasting
I never do, hence my
the sovereignty in laws does seem to be overblown by the Leave campaign, I think. I think the Remain campaign is very, very strong on that. And it seems to come down to chill out. It's not as bad as you think.
Yeah.
Stop worrying.
Also, I don't know if we have any scientists listening or whether you guys are into science, but I have heard that leaving would be bad for science in the UK. The amount of money that the EU spends on science and infrastructure, but mostly science.
Well, I've got a little something for you guys.
Good.
If you keep going while I'm doing this, but basically it shows you a list and reasons why, and this is for everybody out there. We shouldn't leave Europe, it's one of those things. I'm just trying to find it. So
Don't worry, I'll fill in. Chat more about that food wastage show.
Yeah, food. What a terrible waste.
Terrible waste.
Terrible waste.
While Curtis, you have a look for that.
There we go.
That
It took me
was
some
easy.
time, but I got it. If it let me open it up. Damn, I don't want to edit it. God damn it, you technological nightmare. Sorry.
No, it's all right. I'll do some filling in. We are going to come on to when Curtis has found whatever he has, we don't even know, is come back to immigration. Obviously, that's like the hottest topic for the Leave campaign and as well for the Remain. The impression that I'm getting whenever I look at the press or the Leave campaign, it is mainly focused on immigration on either side. And the bottom line is, if you have migrated over here within a certain period of time, you're going to have to leave. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's what's going to happen if we do leave Europe. But some people want us to leave for that reason, which is
pretty crazy. It's pretty out there. And look, if we leave the EU, what it mean in terms of people being here, the negotiations will take, 3 to 4 years. Okay, what it will mean is that the rules will change. So if you're from the EU, you'll need a visa, which you don't at the moment. And that I don't think we're still going to allow Europeans over here. This is going to be the weird thing. What the Leave campaign's telling people is going to happen ain't going to happen. people are still going to come over here. Immigrants are still going to come over here. People from the EU are going to, because we need them in our economy. You know, we need them working here. We need people doing certain jobs, doctors, nurses, you know, care homes. All these things are going to need people. Road building.
What the Leave campaign does, though, it seems to that if, as part of the EU, it's impossible to control immigration. So as long as we're within the EU, we can't control who is immigrating into the country. Not strictly true, but that's the way that they're selling it, as if it's just, you know, it's absolute chaos. When really, I mean, when you look at the statistics, they're really low.
And on top of that, I think it's playing into the whole idea of crime, because this is the whole thing about them talking about people coming over here, you can't control it. The majority of people that come into this country, in most countries, aren't people who are criminals. And that's what they're trying to play out.
Yeah.
They're going to be like, they're Muslims, they're criminals, they're coming over here. And it's a silly argument, because if that was the case, this country would be in absolute chaos. But in actual fact, it's not. Our economy is starting to boom. Oh, you know, people are. I think there's still like 700,000 jobs that need to be filled still in the UK.
Yeah.
So effectively, I think the whole argument about immigration is a silly one, because if you have a strong economy, you have lots of immigrants.
Yeah.
That's always been the case. That's why. What's that country again? America. That's why it's there. They have lots of immigrants that go there. Canada, even the Australians, even with their gunboat diplomacy, if their economy starts to boom, what are they going to need? Immigrants. They're angry at illegal immigrants and asylum seekers, but they'll still have people coming in there as long as they're not brown. No offence to my Australian friends. But anyway, sorry, that list I had for you, just quickly, before we go any further.
Oh, yeah, just going back to...
Is this the science
Curtis
list?
had on something to do with science.
So in terms of scientists, the people we've got saying no: Stephen Hawkins, 13 Nobel Prize winners, Oxford University and other university heads. Do you know in terms of scientists are saying leave Europe? None. Nobody. Zero. Zilch. You know, vote Moraine. World leaders. Here's another one for you, if you don't mind me just jumping in here.
Go on then.
This one.
You're editing it.
Barack Obama, all EU leaders, President of China, President of India, President of Canada, President of New Zealand, President of Japan, former United Nations leader, Secretary General of NATO. Whose vote leave? Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, leader of ISIS. I'm just, you know, I'm sorry, guys. It's just,
No, that is an excellent point, and we apologise to any Donald Trump followers out there. And
why are you listening to our show?
You're not like what's coming next.
I want you to listen to these shows. You know, apart from the fact that Georgina's doing a fantastic job presenting them.
No, you're absolutely right. We do want appeal of either sides to listen, and we hope that we are, giving it enough balance. See about that when we round up.
I'm all for it, but if you're leading lights of this campaign are people like Boris, Farage, and Michael Gove, and the other side you've got Michael Corbyn on his own. Let's just say it was Corbyn. That's enough reason to vote stay, surely.
The interestingly, on that list you gave about world leaders who vote for us to stay, 2 or 3 of which their human rights is incredibly different to what we have here, yet they still support our place within the EU. That's definitely worth noting from that list. Thank you for that, Curtis. We're going to go back to immigration and just round up, because we haven't had much on the Remain side of it. Only a minority of UK... Oh, wait, no, going back. Hang on, we're going to have to re-edit that. I'm not good with an iPad, sorry. Thank you for that, Curtis. That is an informative list. Just coming back to immigration briefly, we haven't had much on the Remain side. We have spoken about that immigrants do make up a huge amount of the workforce over here.
Especially in the NHS.
Especially the NHS. Labour is in, not the party, as in the in work Labour. Cameron's EU deal means in-work benefits for EU migrant workers will be limited for the first 4 years.
Which I think is a good idea.
Okay.
I think it's a good idea only because the problem with the system that we have in this country is we have benefits in a way not much of Europe does have. And it's based on the principle that nobody, after World War II, pre-World War II, there was lots of poverty, and in this country, after World War II, the British people voted en masse in the biggest ever landslide, I believe, in this country for social housing, the NHS, and the welfare state. Even though most people just go, they voted for the NHS, the welfare state and housing was part of that. Now, the problem is that there's limited resources. People think it's not free, it's paid for. Somebody somewhere is paying for this. And I think to remind people that they are, limiting benefits would be a good idea. I think one of the rules they've brought in now is that if you get child benefits as an immigrant from the EU, you get them based on the country you're from. So you don't get child benefits based on here. Because you had that situation, and the Daily Mail loved rolling it out. You'd have lots of the Romani coming over here, working, by the way, getting benefits, sending them back to there and building these massive houses, which obviously upset Betty in Northamptonshire. I know, that sort of thing. So there are things we can do, but that just proves we can do it within Europe,
Absolutely. And as somebody who has used the benefit system in this country, it is a fantastic system, and one that, is not around in Europe. I think the counter-argument is probably for the Leave campaign, is that people are immigrating over here and using the benefits system as opposed to working and having the benefits system. Is that's not necessarily the case. There is a very, very small percentage of benefit fraud. It depends what paper you read, but the actual statistic is very, very small, and not necessarily from people who've immigrated over here.
I believe if statistically it's about 0.6%.
Yeah, it's something stupid like that.
I think it's that. But don't quote me if I'm wrong. Feel free to abuse me, just not on Twitter.
Yeah, tweet in.
Tweet in, Facebook in, anything.
But
abuse is much welcome.
I'm very aware of the fact that there are people that do that, but it's a minority of people. And really, if the people are able to do that, it means other people, not immigrants, but even British people are doing it. And the problem is the system and the way it's set up. And benefits shouldn't be used as a tool to humiliate or stop people from being able to look after their families and their friends. We shouldn't go down that route. But there are problems with it, and I think it's partly that people think it's free. It's being paid for by someone.
People need to learn the positive of the benefit system and the positive of people immigrating to this country and what that does for us. But it depends on where and what you're reading. I want to move on.
Okay.
Actually, here's a thought though that I was just thinking about, going back to crime thing. Am I right in thinking that any rapist or murderer who commits offence in Britain and then disappears off across the border, surely they can be brought back here if we stay in the EU to be tried here?
Ooh, that's a good one.
So surely it means that justice there's a higher chance of justice being done.
Justice prevails.
I think that'll be irrelevant of the EU. I think it's whoever you have a deal with, to be quite honest.
Right, so actually leaving.
Like if somebody committed a crime and fled to Australia, we could have them extradited.
Regardless.
Yeah, it's all down to politics, and that in defence of the Leave campaign you can do.
Because I thought it was more likely that was going to happen if we were in, just because of a European arrest warrant. But
it's easier to do it because in Europe, but it's you still have to go to court. Like Assange, he had to he had to be taken to court to get that extradition done for the USA. But it's down to whatever deals you have,
That's something we actually can't answer. That's a big gap in both campaigns, that we're not too sure what would happen in that case. I'm going to put this to you both. How much do you think the public really care about Brexit, Joseph?
Probably not as much as they should, to be honest with you. I think that's the honest
truth,
answer.
yes.
Yeah, there is a sad truth, you're right, but I think not as much as they should. And I think that is sometimes our downfall in this country, is perhaps not taking big decisions seriously enough.
There is an apathy, especially of, I'd certainly say my generation, the sort of millennial generation, a term I don't love, but,
stuck with it.
It works.
Just about.
Yeah, just about. And linking to that, do we really need this referendum? I mean, it came as a result that the government was divided about whether to stay in the EU or not, because David Cameron didn't get basically the deal he wanted with Brussels, divided his party, who are the majority in government, and here we are. It's down to the people.
Yeah.
So in that respect, we need it because somebody's got to make the decision.
Yeah, but was it 50,000 people who were trying to register at the last minute so they could actually apply to be on the electoral vote or something.
Yes.
And the government had to extend it by, 48 hours because...
I think it was something like 125,000 people.
So it's not 50,000, 125, right.
It was quite a large number, if my memory serves me right.
I mean...
I've said it earlier on the show. I think this referendum was a very bad idea. I think it wasn't well thought out, and I think we're going to be stuck in a situation where we come to regret it. Simply, if you look at what happened with the Scottish referendum, I think it may actually damage the Tory party a lot more than it will damage Labour, but I think the wounds of this will be deep and felt for a long, long time, because basically it's going to be divisive. Unless you have, unlike the UK, at the moment doesn't have, a large voting population, a referendum's pointless. If, let's say, 20% of people who are allowed to vote, okay, and then 11% of that 20% vote to leave, and it happens to be everybody who doesn't live in London or the big cities, what will happen then? You know, as a Londoner, I love Europe. I fly over there, I meet, get my euros. Never happy when I've got happier than when I've got a bunch of euros and I'm in France or Italy. Once that happens, I think that's going to be the saddest day ever. And I think if it turns out that the vote ends up being divisive, I think what will happen is recriminations will be bad. There'll be a lot of anger out there. I think there'll be a lot of disappointment. And even if the Brexit lot win, I think it's going to damage the voting.
Yeah. I'll just add that what I really want is, I think within the EU there's a bigger sense of a community, and leaving we're going to lose a sense of identity, especially as I think I feel as though we're entering a post-nationalist phase of society, and I think that's inevitable because of globalization. But if we leave the EU and we're at another country, will just grab us by the scruff of the neck and try and pull us into the periphery of there.
That brings us beautifully
Russia.
onto basically. That brings us onto a small point of what's the alternative once we're out of the EU? Although there are attractive reasons to leave it, you've got America on one side, Russia on the other. Are they going to then want to get into bed with us in regards to trade and consumerism? And as I think I said before, is it out of the frying pan into the fire?
No, I think whatever happens, it will be all right long term, whether we're in or out. I think the big difference it will make is to your everyday Joe on the street, who finds that going on holiday might change a bit, who you have to get visas more for places. But I think long term it won't change much because it can't. The UK will still have to do trade with Europe. We'll need to negotiate a deal with Europe, and we'll have to either accept that deal or go bye-bye. I doubt they'll do that. So I think leaving won't be great. I think it will affect people long-term, day-to-day, especially with workers' rights and stuff like that. The NHS, I think, the fact that most of the people who want to privatise the NHS are on the Leave side, that could be a big thing that's up for grabs. TTP, Europe doesn't like, most of the European governments don't like TTP, which is a big trade deal that's coming up. It might mean that we're more likely to accept that deal. So little things like that are worrying, but we'll see what happens. I'm honestly, in my heart, if I had enough money, I'd be like, I'm getting that ticket to Spain, bro.
I'm worried. I go to Italy next week. I might not be able to get back in. Talking about a Saturday. God, that's real problems, people.
But I think people need to think more, and I think instead of going on Google and finding someone who agrees with them, instead of just taking Farage and Boris at their words, people need to challenge these guys more, because they're not. And I think the vote's stupid because it doesn't need to happen. Because let's say we win the vote, if UKIP get into any position of power, they can force another referendum, and that's why I don't like this referendum. Not enough people, as far as I'm concerned, are going to vote, and that for me is an issue.
Okay, to wrap up, we need to bring the show to an end. I hope you're not too terrified about next week's referendum, and we'll be back soon with another Global Frequency. I've been your host, Georgie Morrell, and I would like to thank my guests, Curtis and Joseph.
Thank you.
And we will see you soon.
Yeah.